Did you know there are words you can say to a narcissist that instantly stop their disrespect? Not arguments, not shouting, not pleading, just words. And once they hear them, their attempts to control you falter. Because the right words do more than defend you. They shift the power dynamic entirely. They make the narcissist pause, rethink, and even fear crossing your boundaries again. Today, I'll teach you the exact words and phrasing that stop manipulation in its tracks. This isn't about revenge, it's about confidence, calm, and reclaiming control over your life. By the end, you'll know how to speak in a way that protects your peace and your dignity. If you're ready to stop being manipulated, hit that subscribe button now. Comment boundaries first to claim your personal power. Share this with someone struggling to stand up to toxic behavior. And remember, your words can be stronger than their attempts at control. One of the most powerful ways to protect yourself from a narcissist is through the deliberate use of words that establish clear boundaries. Narcissists thrive on control, manipulation, and testing limits. They are highly attuned to emotional reactions, and they often exploit uncertainty, hesitation, or defensiveness to maintain power over someone. When you speak with intention, however, you can disrupt that pattern entirely. Certain carefully chosen statements signal, in no uncertain terms, that you will no longer tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or attempts to control your behavior. These words act like a psychological barrier, creating a line the narcissist cannot cross without consequence. The first critical principle in using words effectively with a narcissist is clarity. Ambiguous or hesitant statements leave room for interpretation, and narcissists are skilled at exploiting ambiguity. When they sense uncertainty, they push boundaries, test limits, and attempt to manipulate the situation. For example, saying something like, "I feel like you might be overreacting," can unintentionally invite debate or emotional argument. In contrast, a statement such as, "I do not accept being spoken to that way," leaves no room for negotiation. It is concise, firm, and unambiguous. These kinds of statements communicate not only your feelings, but also your expectations for behavior. Equally important is the tone in which these words are delivered. Narcissists are highly sensitive to emotion, and their attempts at provocation are designed to elicit anger, guilt, or defensiveness. Speaking in a calm, steady, and neutral tone removes the emotional fuel they rely on. Your words are powerful not because they are loud or aggressive, but because they are firm, confident, and measured. When a narcissist encounters a response that is free from emotional reactivity, they are often unsettled. It challenges their sense of control because they no longer have access to the predictable reactions that sustain their influence. Another key element is the ownership of your feelings and choices. Statements that center around "I" rather than "you" emphasize personal responsibility and independence. For instance, saying, "I feel disrespected when you speak to me like that," or "I choose not to engage when I am treated this way," communicates that your boundaries are non-negotiable. It does not attack the narcissist directly, nor does it accuse them in a way that might provoke defensiveness. Instead, it asserts your autonomy while leaving the narcissist with no leverage to manipulate your response. Repetition is also crucial. Narcissists often test limits repeatedly, probing to see if boundaries can be bent. One firm statement is rarely enough. Consistent reinforcement is what creates a lasting shift in the dynamic. By repeating clear, concise statements whenever a boundary is tested, you gradually condition the narcissist to recognize that certain behaviors will no longer succeed. Over time, they learn that attempts to provoke, manipulate, or disrespect you are futile. This repetition, when combined with calm delivery and ownership language, signals a permanent shift in control. It's also important to recognize that the words themselves are only part of the strategy. Your actions must align with them. Narcissists are keen observers of behavior, and any inconsistency can be exploited. If you say, "I will not tolerate that behavior," but then continue to engage when the disrespect occurs, the statement loses its power. Consistent follow-through reinforces the credibility of your words, making it clear that your boundaries are firm, non-negotiable, and not contingent on the narcissist's compliance. When you use these words strategically, the effect on the narcissist can be immediate. They may pause, hesitate, or attempt to backtrack. Some may become defensive or try alternative strategies, but the key difference is that their usual methods of control no longer work. By establishing clear verbal boundaries, you disrupt the dynamic of manipulation and reclaim the space that the narcissist previously dominated. Ultimately, speaking with intention is not about confrontation or revenge. It is about protecting your emotional well-being, asserting your autonomy, and creating a safe environment for yourself. The words you choose, delivered calmly and repeatedly, act as a form of empowerment. They communicate to the narcissist that your boundaries exist, that your peace is non negotiable, and that your independence cannot be undermined. Over time, this method teaches the narcissist that attempts to disrespect or control you will no longer succeed, and it allows you to navigate the relationship or distance yourself from it with clarity, confidence, and dignity. Now, expand the second keynote with no subbotting in detail. Output in 700 words. The second key to ensuring that a narcissist never disrespects you again lies not just in the words themselves, but in how you deliver them. Narcissists are masters at exploiting emotional reactions. They feed off anger, guilt, fear, or even panic. Their control depends on predictable responses. When they provoke, manipulate, or criticize, they are testing the waters to see how you will react. If they detect any sign of emotional turbulence, they double down, using your reactions as fuel for further manipulation. Understanding this is critical because it reveals why calm and steady communication is far more effective than yelling, arguing, or pleading. When you speak to a narcissist, the tone of your voice often carries more weight than the words themselves. A calm, neutral, yet firm tone sends a signal that their attempts to manipulate or provoke are ineffective. For example, saying, "I will not tolerate being spoken to that way," in a steady, unshaken tone, has a different impact than delivering the same words while shaking with anger or frustration. The first communicates confidence and control. The second communicates emotion that the narcissist can exploit. Narcissists are highly attuned to subtle cues, so maintaining calm composure strips them of the emotional leverage they rely on. Neutrality also reduces the chances of escalation. A narcissist thrives on chaos, unpredictability, and emotional intensity. If you respond with anger or defensiveness, they see this as validation that their tactic worked. By contrast, calmness creates discomfort for them. When a narcissist expects a fight and instead encounters a measured, unemotional response, it interrupts their psychological script. They are often left unsure how to respond because their usual strategies, provocation, criticism, or guilt, no longer produce the expected effect. Another essential aspect is confidence. Words spoken with certainty carry a weight that arguments and explanations rarely achieve. Narcissists are constantly testing boundaries, looking for hesitation or indecision. Phrases like, "This is my boundary and I will not engage beyond it," said with confidence, communicate clarity and non-negotiability. Confidence communicates that you are in control of your emotional space, and the narcissist cannot manipulate it. This kind of verbal assertiveness signals to them that they are no longer the center of your emotional world. It's also important to understand that calm, firm communication does not mean passivity. Neutrality and steadiness are not the same as silence or avoidance. You are still asserting yourself. You are still defending your boundaries. The difference is that your assertion is controlled, intentional, and unreactive. By remaining calm, you deny the narcissist the emotional reactions they need to feel powerful. In many ways, this is more disarming than confrontation because it is unexpected and removes the usual drama that sustains the dynamic. Delivering words in a steady tone also strengthens your credibility. Narcissists are highly observant and attuned to inconsistencies. If your words are delivered in anger or panic, they may dismiss them as temporary or emotional. However, when your statements are calm, consistent, and unwavering, it signals permanence. They come to recognize that your boundaries are not situational or emotional, they are deliberate and they will be enforced. Over time, this consistency teaches the narcissist that disrespect and manipulation will no longer yield results. Another subtle but powerful effect of neutral delivery is that it communicates emotional independence. Narcissists are accustomed to relationships in which they provoke and feed on reactions. By remaining calm and steady, you demonstrate that your emotional state is self-contained and not controlled by them. This is deeply unsettling for narcissists because it removes one of their primary tools for influence. Without emotional leverage, they are forced to reconsider their strategies or disengage entirely. Repetition of calm, steady language amplifies this effect. Each time you respond in a composed and assertive manner, you reinforce the reality that your boundaries are fixed. The narcissist may attempt multiple approaches: provocation, charm, criticism, but consistent neutral responses over time train them that these tactics are ineffective. This repeated reinforcement gradually conditions the narcissist to stop testing you altogether. Ultimately, the combination of calm tone, confident delivery, and clear words creates a powerful protective barrier. It communicates that you are aware of their behavior, that you will not tolerate disrespect, and that your emotional state is no longer available for manipulation. Narcissists may try initially to provoke or intimidate, but they quickly learn that their usual tactics fail. By mastering how you deliver your words, you disrupt their psychological control, safeguard your peace, and establish a level of authority that commands respect, even from someone who once sought to dominate your emotions. This method does more than stop disrespect. It redefines the power dynamic. It transforms interactions from chaos and manipulation into clarity and calm. In the end, it is not aggression or confrontation that makes narcissists step back. It is the quiet, unwavering strength that comes from speaking with intention, confidence, and emotional control. Now, expand the third keynote with no subading in detail. Output in 700 words. Another key aspect of ensuring a narcissist never disrespects you again is the intentional use of language that emphasizes ownership of your feelings and choices. This principle is incredibly powerful because narcissists thrive on assigning blame, twisting facts, and provoking guilt. They want you to react in ways that reaffirm their sense of control. When you speak in a way that clearly communicates your personal experience, emotions, and decisions, it removes the emotional fuel they rely on and asserts your independence in a way they cannot easily challenge. The foundation of this approach lies in using I statements rather than you statements. This may sound simple, but it fundamentally changes the dynamic of communication. For instance, instead of saying, "You are being unfair," which can trigger defensiveness or manipulation, you would say, "I feel disrespected when I am spoken to in that tone." Notice the difference. The focus is on your perception and experience, not an accusation or judgment. Narcissists are highly sensitive to criticism and can easily turn you statements into a counterattack. By framing your feelings as your own, you remove the opportunity for blame shifting while asserting your autonomy. Ownership language also communicates that you are actively choosing your responses and actions. A statement like, "I choose not to engage in this conversation when it becomes disrespectful," is more than just a boundary. It is a declaration of self-governance. It demonstrates that your behavior is intentional and that you are no longer subject to their emotional manipulation. Narcissists rely on creating uncertainty and unpredictability in your reactions. When they realize your responses are deliberate and consistent, it undermines the control they once held. Another powerful component of ownership language is that it highlights your emotional independence. Narcissists often provoke reactions to feel important or to maintain influence. When your statements communicate that your feelings are your own, it signals that their attempts to provoke, shame, or manipulate are ineffective. For example, saying, "I am responsible for my emotions, not yours," establishes a clear boundary around the emotional space they once invaded. It communicates that while they may attempt to manipulate, they cannot dictate how you feel or behave. Consistency reinforces this strategy. One-off statements may have some impact, but narcissists are persistent. They often test limits repeatedly to see if boundaries can be bent. By repeatedly using ownership language, you train them to recognize that your boundaries are permanent and that attempts to provoke or disrespect you will not succeed. Over time, they may even reduce attempts to engage in behavior that previously caused conflict because they realize that it no longer produces the reaction they expect. The subtlety of this approach is also important. Ownership language is firm without being confrontational. Narcissists often escalate conflicts when they feel attacked, so a calm, controlled statement about your feelings or choices communicates authority without giving them emotional leverage. For example, "I am not willing to discuss this further until we can speak respectfully," is firm and protective without being antagonistic. It conveys your standards and maintains your peace simultaneously. Additionally, ownership language reduces the likelihood of manipulation. Narcissists often use guilt, shame, or obligation to elicit compliance. By consistently framing your statements around your own feelings and decisions, you remove those levers. Guilt-based tactics are less effective when the narcissist sees that you are clearly prioritizing your autonomy and well-being. They are confronted with the reality that you are no longer a malleable target. You are a person with agency. Another advantage of emphasizing ownership in your speech is that it fosters internal empowerment. When you articulate your feelings and choices clearly, you reinforce your own sense of self-worth and control. Narcissistic relationships often erode confidence and create self-doubt. Ownership language counters this by reaffirming that you are capable of defining your own boundaries, protecting your emotional space, and making independent decisions. Over time, this approach fundamentally changes the power dynamic. The narcissist learns that disrespect and manipulation no longer yield results, and they are forced to adjust their behavior. Your calm assertion of emotional independence, combined with clear, ownership-focused language, creates a psychological barrier they cannot easily breach. It signals to them that attempts at disrespect or control will fail, and it reinforces your position as someone who cannot be coerced or intimidated. Ultimately, emphasizing your feelings and choices is about reclaiming your autonomy and dignity. It communicates to the narcissist that your boundaries are real, your reactions are deliberate, and your emotional world is self-governed. Over time, the repeated use of these words and statements ensures that your independence is respected. It disrupts the cycle of manipulation and allows you to interact or disengage on your own terms, free from the control they once exerted. This is the true power of speaking with ownership. It transforms your words into a shield, a statement of authority, and a declaration that disrespect will no longer be tolerated. Now expand the fourth keynote with no subbotting in detail. Output in 700 words. The fourth key to ensuring that a narcissist never disrespects you again lies in the power of repetition and consistency. Saying the right words once may have an initial effect, but narcissists are highly skilled at testing limits. They thrive on unpredictability and emotional manipulation, often pushing boundaries repeatedly to see how far they can go. One firm boundary may provoke compliance temporarily, but if it is not consistently reinforced, the narcissist will quickly resume their old patterns. Repetition ensures that your boundaries are not just a statement, they become a pattern, an expectation, and a rule that the narcissist learns cannot be broken. Consistency works hand in hand with the calm and ownership-focused language previously discussed. When you combine firm statements with repeated enforcement, you remove the uncertainty that narcissists exploit. For example, if you say, "I will not tolerate being spoken to that way," and then respond differently the next time the same behavior occurs, it signals vulnerability. The narcissist interprets this as an opportunity to reassert control. By contrast, repeating the same response every time, calmly, firmly, and without justification, sends a clear message. Disrespect will not be accepted under any circumstances. One of the psychological mechanisms at play here is conditioning. Narcissists are highly attuned to patterns in behavior. They learn quickly which tactics provoke reactions and which do not. If they repeatedly encounter the same calm, assertive boundary without any emotional fuel, they eventually adjust their behavior. Over time, they recognize that their old strategies, criticism, guilt-tripping, provocation, are no longer effective. Consistent repetition of boundaries creates predictability, and predictability removes the chaos that narcissists rely on to maintain power. Another important aspect of repetition is that it reinforces your internal sense of authority and confidence. Maintaining firm boundaries in the face of repeated testing is challenging, especially if the narcissist escalates their behavior or attempts new forms of manipulation. Each time you repeat your calm, assertive response, you reinforce your own commitment to your well-being and your autonomy. This internal reinforcement is just as important as the external effect it has on the narcissist. It strengthens your resolve and makes it increasingly difficult for them to intimidate or unsettle you. It is also worth noting that narcissists are often very patient and persistent. They may attempt to wear you down over time, testing whether your boundaries will bend. Without repetition, a single statement of firmness may eventually be ignored or bypassed. By consistently reinforcing the same message, you prevent them from finding loopholes or exploiting inconsistencies. Over weeks and months, this consistent practice trains the narcissist to respect your boundaries, or at least to cease trying to cross them, because the cost of continued attempts becomes clear. Repetition also functions as a psychological reset for the narcissist. Narcissists are accustomed to people reacting unpredictably to their provocations. By repeating the same calm, firm responses every time a boundary is challenged, you disrupt their expectation of chaos. This can create frustration on their part, as their usual tools, anger, fear, or guilt, fail to elicit the desired results. Eventually, many narcissists will reduce or eliminate behaviors that previously caused conflict because they learn that these tactics no longer produce influence or emotional supply. An essential part of this strategy is maintaining emotional detachment while repeating your statements. If repetition is delivered with frustration, anger, or defensiveness, it can actually reinforce the narcissist's attempts at control. Calm repetition removes this vulnerability. For example, saying, I am not discussing this until we speak respectfully. Every time disrespect occurs, without engaging in argument or negotiation, signals firmness and composure. The narcissist receives the same message repeatedly, and the lack of emotional reaction deprives them of the power they once held. Another subtle benefit of repetition is that it gradually changes the overall dynamic of the relationship. Over time, the narcissist learns that certain behaviors are no longer tolerated. This teaches them that manipulation and disrespect are ineffective and may even encourage them to adjust their interactions. While the narcissist may never fully change their underlying traits, they recognize that attempts to control or provoke you are no longer viable, which can dramatically reduce conflict and stress. Ultimately, repetition and consistency serve as a form of psychological armor. Each repeated boundary reinforces your autonomy, protects your emotional space, and communicates unambiguously to the narcissist that their previous strategies are ineffective. While it requires patience and commitment, this practice gradually establishes a lasting shift in the power dynamic. You are no longer vulnerable to manipulation or disrespect because your repeated, calm, and assertive words have taught the narcissist that crossing your boundaries is futile. By consistently practicing this approach, you send a powerful message. Your peace is non-negotiable, your dignity is untouchable, and your emotional independence is permanent. Over time, repetition transforms your words from a one-time defense into a steadfast shield, ensuring that a narcissist cannot easily disrespect you again. It is not just the content of what you say that matters. It is the unwavering, repeated enforcement of your boundaries that creates real, lasting change.